to raise awareness of the Community Police Oversight Board. It's a relatively new board, so we're still trying to get the word out about it, let the citizens know that it's there and it's available, as well as connect with you all, the citizens, and get feedback from you all during this period as we lay down infrastructure for the board, as well as we continue to handle the day-to-day tasks that the board attends to. So we're going to get a little bit further into the board itself in a few minutes, but I first want to give the floor to Councilman Magoo, who just is graciously joining us. He's officially on city vacation as of today, right? This is y'all's y'all's break time, but he still made time for us. And I just want to give him the floor to see if he had any updates or anything he wanted to tell the people that's going on in the city.
Good evening. Ezekiel Tyson, I want to tell you thank you for many years of friendship, many years of service in the community, and many years of protecting people's rights, and really sacrificing yourself for those who need you in many cases. I've had many times over the years that someone has come and need an issue, and I know if I need to, I can always call Zeke and he'll find a way to help. And so I appreciate you and your service on this board as well. It's technically council break through July. I don't really know what that means because we just don't really get an opportunity to take break. I will be traveling a little bit over the next week. My two oldest boys are in the Nationals soccer tournament, and so we're going to go try to bring back a championship here to Dallas if we can. So that ought to be fun.
We're overdue. Thank you.
Yes. And you know, the most recent update really from the city is just yesterday the mayor announced committee appointments, and so there's lots of movement. As most people are aware, we have a new city council with several new council members. There were 3 council members that termed off, and we are kind of figuring out now where everybody kind of rested or landed on the committees. The committee that I am chairing is public safety, and so I've spent a lot of time in public safety over the years. Actually close to 16 years. I was a community prosecutor working with police and fire for almost 10 years, really running the streets and digging through some of the highest crime areas of our city, trying to make it better. And I'm looking forward to this role to really help look at ways we can make our community safer. We are getting some updated numbers that some of our violent crime numbers are getting a little bit better, and
that's good.
We've had some impact lately. It's still a long way to go. And as everybody knows, we're moving into the July 4th weekend, which is traditionally one of the most violent weekends of the year in our city and in many other big cities. We got people shooting guns and fireworks and all sorts of other things and it's just hot and people are out trying to enjoy themselves and have fun. And often that can escalate into things. So I want to caution everybody to be safe, now we're kind of coming out of the COVID restrictions, and to have time to be with family and to celebrate our country, and to do all those things you want to do, but do it in a safe manner, and try to get home and go to bed at some point in time and not cause the problems that happen late at night sometimes. So
all right.
You know, between that and you know, we've got several projects we're working on in District 10 that are making progress, and I'm really excited about some of the things happening at 12,000 Greenville and City of Refuge. I've got another trip going to Atlanta with some of our city staff and leadership later this month, or later July, and continue to make progress on that. So a lot of good things happening. We are in the throes of the summer heat wave, and so I ask people to be careful, to take care of each other, love and serve your neighbors, and we will continue to move things forward. I'll say one thing by way of community. I can't see who all's on here, but one of our community leaders that have been engaged in both public safety and in arts and in parks and trails, and just one of my dear friends, James White, passed away this past weekend. I originally met James because he ran against me for council in 2015, and he became a very, very dear friend. And so I ask everybody on here just to remember him, and he certainly lived for our community and our city and did a lot of good. And so he will be missed greatly. With that, I'll turn it back over to you, Zeke, and I'm here to listen and hear comments from the community and see where they suggest things are working and where they aren't, and listen to the questions, and I'll be around. But thank y'all.
Great. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Oh, guys, and that's one thing I did not tell you all. I don't know if you can, or how your screen is set up, but there is a chat feature where you can send questions to the group, the panel, so that we can answer them. So we're going to do a little talking, but we also, if you guys have any questions or anything we can clarify, please don't hesitate to shoot it out there in the chat, and we'll be sure to check it before we're all said and done, so that we can address any concerns or questions. All right, next we have graciously joining us the director, Tanya McClary, who as we were very fortunate. We did a national search for a director for the Police Oversight Office, and I was able to be a part of that, just not as a board member per se, but more so as a citizen. And I was able to be part of those panels, and I was just very impressed from the moment I met her. And I think she just brings a wealth of knowledge and experience to this role in this position. And I think we're lucky to have her. So Tanya, if you just want to tell us a little bit about what's going on with the office and kind of how you're structuring it. Because I mean, you started it like literally, right? Just literally.
Well, thank you, board member Tyson, for those kind words. Mommy, take you on the road with me whenever I travel. So I'm so excited. I'm Tanya McClary. I'm the police monitor for the city of Dallas and the director of the Office of Community Police Oversight. And as Ezekiel said, I am the very first police monitor for the city of Dallas. So I always like to say I feel like I'm 30 to 40 years in the making when, the civilians in Dallas really said we want a police oversight. Have been asking for a long time for someone, a police monitor, that I'm the realization of that dream. And so I'm take this very seriously. I have a lot of weight on my shoulder, but I'm excited to be here. We also may have our chair of the board drop in. If he does, we'll see if we can move him over as a panelist, so you all will be able to meet him as well. But I am excited about the work that we are doing. So the office officially opened on October 1st of 2019. And I came and got hired I came in and started the last week of February. And then like 2 weeks later, we were in a pandemic.
Right.
So I had all these elaborate plans about getting out and meeting all of you wonderful people, hitting every district and coming out and hearing all of your needs. And then of course, a lot of that has not been able to happen. So now that the city is opening back up, the state is opening back up, our offices, a lot of the focus is going to be on more and more community engagement. One of the things that happens with an oversight office in any city, but especially a city as big as Dallas, is that people don't know who we are, and people don't know we exist, and people are often confused about who we are. So I want to say a little bit about that, because the name of the office is the Office of Community Police Oversight. We get so many of you all thinking that we work with the police department, work for them rather. We do work with them, but we don't work for them. So our office is totally independent of that. Chief Garcia and myself I am not on his payroll. I don't work for the police department. I'm a city employee, just like he's a city employee. So I always like to say that up front. So our office is not on the payroll of the Dallas Police Department. We are independent. And we are here for you. I kind of call myself like a bridge. This is the kind of job that eventually you want to work yourself out of. If years from now, the community comes together and says, you know what, Ms. McClary, we no longer need your office. And it's because you all have more confidence in the police, because you all feel like they're serving the community, they're doing what you want to do, then we will celebrate that as a win. When the community says that we have full faith and trust in our police department, that is a win for oversight. But in the meantime, while we are working on that goal, our office is here. We take complaints. We do that in a variety of ways. You can go to our website, which is just dallascityhall.com. And if you do a backslash, it's OCPO, which is Office of Community Police Oversight. We have an email address. It's just OCPO at Dallas City Hall. And I'll try to drop some of these things in the chat where you can email in your complaints. And you can come visit us. Right now, City Hall is closed, but if you make an appointment, you can come in and file your complaint in person. We've actually had several members of the community come in and want to file their complaints in person, and we do that. So one of the biggest functions we have is taking complaints, but I wanted to let you all know some of the other functions that we have as an office. So it's also our job to monitor every officer involved shooting. So whenever you hear about the police department being involved in a shooting with a person, we are dispatched to the scene. So whether that's 2 o'clock in the afternoon or 2 o'clock in the morning, I am getting dressed with normally a member of my team, and we are actually out there at the scene moments after it happens, watching things unfold, watching the evidence being collected, watching the area be canvassed for witnesses, etc. So we are there right in the moment on the scene, watching as the police department starts to investigate. We are also involved in what's called death in custody. So when an individual dies and they're in police custody, we also monitor those investigations from the very, very beginning. And so we often, and we are in any of both of those instances, officer involved shootings and death in custody, the officers get interviewed. Our office is there. We're monitoring those interviews, hearing what the police say very early on in the investigations, and we monitor those as they go forward from the time they leave the police department to the time they go to the district attorney's office to the time they come back to the police department to internal affairs. We monitor all of those steps. We also do independent investigations. So we meet weekly with the police department to try to figure out what to do with you all's complaints. There's 4 kind of silos that happen. So one is that it's called no investigation. So there's a lot of reasons why a complaint will not be investigated. Sometimes we actually get complaints, believe it or not, that have nothing to do with the Dallas Police Department. It could be DART, it could be Mesquite. And so we're not going to investigate it, right? Because they're not in our jurisdiction. Other times, sometimes people fail to articulate a complaint. Sometimes people write on a complaint form that they want to, somebody stole a package off their porch. So that's not a complaint. That's just that they use the complaint form, but we make sure that they know how to file a report. They know how to get to the right place. And so those are some of the reasons why you may hear that there was no investigation of a complaint. Another thing that can happen to a complaint that really is a complaint against Dallas Police Department is that it can go to what's called a division referral. That means it goes back to the substation where those officers work, and they will be addressed by the supervisor at that substation. Will do an independent investigation, look into it, find out what needs to be happened, recommend discipline, etc. And so that will be handled at that level. The other thing that can happen is internal affairs will keep the case. So depending on what it is, if it's potentially a use of force, or there's potentially some fraud or some criminal allegations against an officer, then internal affairs will keep that case, and they will walk through and handle it in all ways. And so another avenue, the 4th one that is coming, hopefully early next year or next spring, is there's going to be mediation. So you will be able to, depending on certain cases, they have to be low-level cases, you will be able to actually sit across from an officer and actually mediate those cases. And so I'm looking forward to our mediation program where actually you all, the community, will be able to sit across from the officers that are affected and actually have a conversation with them and talk about what happened. And hopefully come together. And if there's not a meeting of the minds, I think there's still a value in you being able to be heard and the officer being able to be heard. So we're going to be in the process of hiring a mediation coordinator for the office. That person is going to help me put that in place. And so I'm excited, like I said, to hopefully have that rolled out by next spring. And the other things that we do, we do reports. And so it's our job to look and see if there are things that we need to bring to the attention of the police chief to our council members like Council Member Magoo, also the city manager, Mr. Broadnax. And so we will be doing a series of reports on things that we feel are of concern. And so the very first report we've done is we've done one on misdemeanors and how misdemeanor enforcement is being handled here in the city of Dallas. And so we encourage you to go onto our website and to the board's website and check out their report, and there will be more coming. And another thing we will do is we're going to be doing an annual audit of all the complaints that come in through the police department, just to make sure that we're capturing everything's being handled properly. So we have a lot going on. And then we also hear from you. So we're going to be out in the community. I'm also very excited to be rolling out a Know Your Rights program. So teaming up with some of the schools and some of the rec centers to actually bring Know Your Rights programs to community so people actually know what their rights are when they encounter the police, et cetera. And we're going to be doing a series of discussions in the community with the police monitor where we come out and just kind of go door to door and hear from you. So we are very excited and very busy. And so I'm going to stop there because some of you might be saying, wow, that's a mouthful. And so I'm going to stop there and turn it back over to board member Tyson. And I am here for questions.
That's enough for 2 lifetimes. You guys are working hard, working hard. We really appreciate you guys. So as you can tell from what the director just told you, her and her office is a very small staff. It's just 3 of them currently. They are doing a lot, and they do what I would call the day-to-day working and investigating of complaints and whatnot to synthesize them into reports and bring them back to the board. So let me tell you a little bit about the board. Each city council district council member gets to appoint or promote a person to the board. Then the council votes on the person and they are join the board or not. So you have 14 members from the districts, and then the mayor gets to send up an appointee as well. It's basically our majority rules. We follow Robert's Rules of Order, and we meet monthly, the second Tuesday. What is it, 5:30 to 8:30? Don't make me lie. And are we back in person next month? Not yet.
We don't know yet. Well, this month you all have a break, and then we're not sure about August yet.
Okay, well, fingers crossed. The good thing about the board and our meetings are that even before COVID, you did not have to attend them in person in order to stay informed and to see and know what was going on. There was a Spectrum TV option as well as the internet option, and I believe you could listen in on the telephone as well and participate if you wanted to that way. So there are multiple ways to stay engaged and stay on top of what the board's doing. And we definitely encourage you guys to do that, to watch the meetings, come out to the meetings when they're back in person, things of that nature to help get engaged. So one of the main things that the board does is when a citizen has filed a complaint and they're not pleased with the results of the complaint, then they can basically appeal it and have the board listen to it and review it and see what they think. If we think we need an independent investigation, or if we need to make a recommendation to DPD, or if we need to send it back to internal affairs or to the division. And that's a very important aspect of the board, our function. It's one where I think most of the day-to-day citizens really get to see the board in action and kind of get a feel for what we really do. So that entails possibly watching body cam videos, listening to 911 calls, reading reports about what happened. And then at the meeting, the citizen actually gets a chance to speak. And then we have a DPD representative there as well, who can normally clarify why things happened in the manner in which they did. None of us are police officers, we're civilians. So there's a certain aspect of knowledge that they have about policing and the way they do things that we rely upon, as well as just sometimes they just need to clarify, why did they do such and such to the citizen, or why did you take that action versus just, answering the citizen's question or whatever. So that's a very important aspect of it, and I think that really is what most people see or hear about. Another important aspect is making recommendations on policies and Ms. McClary has a really big project she's working on and going to bring to the board, and then we'll kind of hash it out from there. But she's looking back at our protest policies after the protests last summer, where we had all kinds of things happening at different protests. There was, just all kinds of things happening. And so she's looking back at those policies and making recommendations on those, as well as use of force, just various different things that the DPD is involved with and affects our day-to-day lives as citizens. The board also has established some subcommittees as a way to get citizens more involved with the board. Some of those are the training subcommittee, the technology subcommittee, and the policy subcommittee. And we actually have one of our policy subcommittee members on here, Lori Kelly, and I just want to say hi to you and thank you for volunteering your time to serve and help our community. And basically, the goal of the subcommittees is to not bog down the board in minutia of getting things done. We can flip things over to the subcommittee, have them meet separately, hash things out, try to formulate things and bring it back to the board. Then the board can vote yay or nay, and just simplify things and make the entire process move smoother. That's really about it that I want to say about the board. And we're still doing a lot of training right now. So the director got us a membership to NACO, and I'm gonna, if you remember what that stands for exactly, please jump in. But it's basically a national organization that helps with police oversight, and they do like a ton of webinars and seminars that it's mind blowing because it's thinking of things and reimagining things in looking at things in a different perspective that you might not think of, because that's not your average everyday goal is to sit and think how to reform policing, or what does good policing look like, or what is safety look like overall, or equal justice. These are not things we just sit around all day and ponder necessarily, but it's good to go to these trainings and to get perspectives on how other jurisdictions are doing things and what they're trying out, what's working, what's not working, things of that nature. And it just helps us grow our knowledge base as we, push through and continue to build the framework for this board and move forward into the next level. And Director, one question I got recently that I'd like to ask you. I know we've got the subcommittees where we've got citizens that are involved that way, but how do you foresee, or do you foresee an angle or aspect where more citizens can get involved and help out with the work of the office or with the work of the board overall?
So also, I just want to let people know, so NACO, and they're a really tremendous resource. So NACOLE.org. So it's the National Association for Civilians of Oversight of Law Enforcement. And so they're kind of our national umbrella. Most of the oversight organizations and boards in the country are members of NACO. And so their board, their website is tremendous. They have a conference every year. And in fact, they just opened registration. Because of COVID, their entire conference was virtual last year. This year, they're doing one part that's virtual, and then they're going to do an in-person in December. So it's a really, I would encourage people if they can do it. And they also have scholarships. So for those people that are, we don't want finances to be a burden for you, they do scholarships to attend their conferences. And so I think anybody that's really, really interested in going deeper into oversight should check that out. In terms of how the community can get involved, it's just a little tricky because we have a lot of confidential information that we handle. And so a lot of times to get into the nitty gritty of things, you have to have certain certifications. But there are going to be times when we start rolling out our programs like the Know Your Rights and, kind of Coffee with the Monitor and other, that we definitely are going to have room for ambassadors. We are also looking for organizations that want to be a complaint site. I mean, one of the visions I have for this office is that you can go into many places all over the city of Dallas. So right here in District 10, if any of you say, hey, Tanya, I know a church or an organization that wouldn't mind having the complaint forms and our community can come in and fill them out, please reach out that way. So there are definitely ways that the community can be involved. And then there might be some ways that I haven't thought of. So I have an open door policy, an open email policy. People can email me, call me, and let's think. There could be some way that I hadn't even thought of that community members can be involved. But it's very important for us to have our ground on, have our ear to the ground, our boots on the ground, so to speak, in the community. So like I said, even outside of the things I just mentioned, if there's other creative ways people can think of, we are definitely open to that.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you very much for that. And I see at least one question here. It says, my name is Cynthia Kano, reporter with Univision DFW. One of the biggest issues regarding interactions between police and the Hispanic community, from my experience, is what seems to be a lack of attention when they're victims of crimes. I've covered several stories of work trucks being stolen, and the police response time is extremely long. In one case, a man had his truck stolen in January, and a detective didn't call him until July. Jeez. Is that something the Oversight Office would get involved in? That's a good question.
Mm-hmm. So the only way we know about that is normally if people file a complaint. So I always tell people to file complaints. I know that sometimes community members are hesitant to file complaints. Maybe they don't want the officer to get in trouble, et cetera. But, it's not all. One of the things about complaints, it doesn't always just lead into individual discipline of officers. It also potentially could relate to training issues. It could relate to tactical issues. And so, if people are having a crime happen in January and they're not hearing to somebody in July, I would think that Chief Garcia would want to know about that. And so is that a training issue? What is going on there? And so, yes, that is definitely the kind of things that we want to know about. And like I said, in this case, just call us and let us know that these things are happening, but we definitely want to know about those things. Unfortunately, response times are just hard. A lot of departments across the country, including right here in Dallas, always kind of give the caveat about response times. And one of the things I think people don't know, and you wouldn't know this, right? If you just most of your exposure is kind of like the TV version of the police, is that, and this is, I don't know if it's not fortunate or unfortunate, it's just the nature of it. There's only so many officers. And so when call comes out, they have to prioritize. And so violent crimes against persons are going to take normally precedent over property crimes, et cetera. So for example, if you call and somebody calls and says, I see a woman down the street right now being beaten up, and then somebody else calls and said somebody broke a window in my house, and they have to decide where they're going to send those police resources. They're going to send them to the woman that's being beaten, and then maybe the person whose window was broken at their house, unfortunately, somebody may not get there till 2 hours later, et cetera. And so I know that's been a concern for many of you here in Dallas, the response times, but I also just wanted to just give a little reality about, the limited resources and officers, having to make certain calls. And so I can tell you crimes against persons, violent crimes are always going to take precedence normally over like property crimes and things of that nature. And I want to be clear, I don't think the police department is sending a message that those things aren't important. But, when there's potentially loss of life or other things, they want to try to get to those situations quicker. And I know that that's one of the things that Chief Garcia is working on, is response times for the department.
Excellent, excellent. Good to know. Thank you for that answer. And I had something from Ms. Manders. Thank you very much for tuning in, Ms. Manders. Very strong.
Mr. Tyson, you have stuff in the chat feature. Yes. And the question and answer. Yes,
okay,
sir.
Cool. I see the chat right now, and then we'll flip back to the question and answer. How about that? Don't let me forget anything, though. Thank you, because I will. I didn't even see the chat at first. Okay, so Ms. Manners was asking about internal affairs. Internal affairs is back at DPD, so that would be if a case is going back to them versus us doing an investigation. And what else?
What was your question?
The question was, is internal affairs within us or is it within DPD? And let me keep scrolling. When will you get more staff for your office?
So before the end of this fiscal year, we'll have 2 more staff, and then depending on what happens with the budget, we may have an additional 1 or 2. So, but the ones that were approved by council for this fiscal year, I'm hoping that they will be in the seats in the next month or 2. And one of those is the mediation coordinator. So we're very excited to get that person here and to have them help sit with me and craft the vision for our mediation program. And that's one of the areas where also I know your Councilman Magoo has a lot of experience in mediation, et cetera. And so I know he, will also be excited to see that program roll out and may have some advice for us as well. So I'm looking forward to working with Councilman Magoo and getting some of his feedback as we're in the early formation stages of the mediation program.
Excellent. Yeah, that'll be great. That'll be great. The next question is, does your department share resources or recommendations from organizations like Center for Police Reform, Equal Justice Initiative, and things from other cities with the board or the department? There's so much good research studies that other cities and policies are learning from, as I'm sure you know. Oh, is that coming to me? No. Oh, yeah, that's to you, Tanya, I guess. Oh,
okay.
sharing?
So we do. We actually will meet with groups. We met recently with a coalition of groups that represent immigrant communities, for example, because the immigrant community has such a unique vantage point around policing. As you can imagine, if you're working in a community where people are undocumented, they're not really feeling sure about picking up the phone and dialing 911 and things of that nature. And so we had a meeting with folk to help us understand the realities of what's going on, to help us understand the sensitivity so we can bring them back. So we do meet with organizations that have particular constituencies. I know that we're going to be doing some outreach to like the LGBTQ community, for example, to find out the homeless community. So we are open to meeting with communities that have very specific constituents that you all are concerned about with policing. And we do share national practices. One of the things that our board member Tyson talked about was training. And so I do try to bring them best practices from around the country. I also bring those to the police department. And in fact, the police department is looking into some of the issues that I brought to them that other cities are doing around like issues of use of force and things of that nature. So I do try to make sure that our police department is on the cutting edge, that we are modeling 21st century policing. And so it's a combination of hearing what you all need here in Dallas and also bringing some of the best practices from other parts of the country to the department as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and you've also implemented that a little training portion in each one of our board meetings now. So I think that's going to be helpful as well moving forward, to just get people more educated and more knowledgeable about different resources out there. So thank you. So to be clear, we have a training subcommittee, a policy subcommittee, and a technology subcommittee. And the way we filled those positions was we made an announcement to the public, and then board members came forward with people that were recommended from their district or people who contacted them from their district who want to get involved. And I believe we'll keep the same process going as people roll off those subcommittees. I would assume we would make an announcement again and then vote on those new subcommittee members. Do you envision it happening any differently, Ms. McClary, Director?
No, and we have 2 more too. We have the rules subcommittee and also community engagement and transparency
engagement.
So there's actually five opportunities, 5 subcommittees for the community to be involved in. Their year appointments. This year, because of COVID, we've gotten off to a year start. So I think the board may consider extending this one to give these community members an actual chance to do some more work, but I don't know yet. That'll be their decision. But normally it would be a year appointment.
Great, thank you, ma'am. All right, let me keep scrolling. Lake Highlands Mothers Against Racism is happy to help in any way. Thank you guys very much. Excellent organization. Smith, the contact is very good. Thank you very much. I think that was just an introduction. Sylvia Fernandez, pleasure to have you on here, Ms. Fernandez. And I believe, do we have a question from Mr. West? Or let me click to the Q&A. What metrics do you use to determine whether the oversight board is effective or perhaps at least not harmful? Well, I don't see how the board could be harmful because it's an oversight board to oversee the police department. How do we measure effectiveness? That's a good question. I mean, well, I guess you could look at it several different ways based on number of complaints that come in that are dealt with or number of investigations done per year. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head how many complaints the office has reviewed, but it's literally, is it on average 100 a month, or what would you say, Director?
It's averaging about that, about close to 100 a month. But remember, we see all of the complaints. So not just the ones that come into our office, all the ones that get filed by the community with the Dallas Police Department. So it's definitely at least 100 a month because we look at the total of them. So we see everything that comes in terms of complaints.
Right. And so the goal is to take a look at all those complaints and to provide feedback from our aspect of whether or not policies were followed, procedures were followed, and whether or not further investigation is warranted is how I would classify that. Would you say it any differently or add anything to that?
No.
Yeah. Yeah. So with that being said, letting the citizens of Dallas know that there is an alternative there. There is a group of individuals outside of the police department that they can turn to and air any concerns or any attaboys to, I think can only be helpful, and I think is only good to build trust within the city between the police and the community, which ultimately leads to a safer community and a safer working environment for the police, in my opinion. So, but thank you for your question. That's a good one. Anything else? Oh, look, maybe let me switch back up to the chat. Director McClary, can you speak to some examples of complaints or investigations that do not involve police shootings or death in custody?
So we get a lot of complaints basically about rudeness and how people were handled by members of the police department that they encounter. So we get a lot of complaints from community members that said officers were rude, officers, just did not comport themselves in ways that they thought they should have. We do get reports of unnecessary force where people felt that they were handled roughly, et cetera, or that people didn't listen to their story when they got out there, that people didn't feel heard, that people were arrested falsely. So it pretty much ranges the gamut. And so that's definitely a lot. So I am concerned about how police are interacting with community members, just because we get a lot of complaints about that, about how people, and a lot of times, for example, in a traffic stop, they're not even fighting whether they were speeding or not, or whether they ran a stop sign. They just were talking about how, when they pulled over, how the officer talked to them, how they treated them. Before there was a mandate for masks for officers, we got a lot of complaints, and we are still getting complaints about officers not wearing masks when interacting with the community. So people had a lot of concerns around COVID. And, since the officer has to be very close to you, for example, when they come up to your car window, et cetera, them not wearing masks or gloves. And so there were several COVID concerns that were coming from the community. And so that's kind of just a snapshot of kind of the things that go on. So like I said, anything, and also for officers not identifying themselves. So, and when you ask an officer for their name and badge number, they have to give it to you. That's a policy. They have to give it to you. So a lot of people are, officers not identifying themselves. So it just really ranges the gamut all the way up to, like I said, unnecessary force, people saying that they were injured by a member of the police department.
Yeah, those stand out as well. And it seemed like a little subset of that is the foul language. It almost always, not always, but often when you get the
Mhm.
the rudeness, there's a little bit of profanity slipped in as well. I don't know why, it just kind of goes hand in hand, I guess, but yeah, we
And,
see those quite often.
and in some of the investigations we've done, is that we've looked into, so when people, so just so you all know this, if you ever file a complaint and you're not happy with the results of the complaint, you can ask for the board to do an independent review. And if they find that something else needs to happen, they can direct my office to do an independent investigation. So most of the time when the investigations that come in are people that are not happy with the results of the police department. And most of those are people where the police department decided not to do an investigation, where, so people want to come forward. They don't understand that. They don't understand why there was no investigation into the complaint. And so they want this board to look and see if they do feel like there should have been something more. Sometimes it could be that the officers, even though there was an investigation, the police department decided not to discipline the officers. So they found the terminology is the officers are not sustained. That means that they found that they did no wrongdoing. And so people disagree with that. They want this board and this office to take a second look at that to see if we agree with it, et cetera. And so those kind of really run the gamut as well in terms of people making allegations of false police reports. So for example, in accident cases, officers not documenting the accidents properly and things of that nature. So verifying that, it happened a particular way or didn't happen a particular way. So they also they're all very interesting, and they kind of run the gamut as well. And so I know some of the ones that are coming up, the board just voted on. In fact, both of the two cases that the board just asked our office to do independent investigations on at their June meeting have to do with unnecessary uses of force. And so in this case, they were both male citizens that were put on the ground and quote unquote, for lack of a better term, roughed up, et cetera. And so the board has asked us to do an independent investigation of those two incidents. So those both involve use of force.
Yep. Okay, guys, anyone submit a question that we missed? I just want to make sure we got everyone.
I think somebody asked about how many complaints. Ms. Woods, you have our most recent, as of the June meeting, how many complaints we've handled?
Let me pull it up for you.
Thank you. Oh, here you go.
So this will cover through the end of May. We haven't crunched our June numbers yet. Our numbers are usually a month behind, so this will be through May. When Ms. Woods gives us this number, this will be through May of 2021.
I'm sorry, I'm just going back to my board stuff.
No problem. And while you're doing that, I see another question. I think we answered it, Mr. West, about problems with policing rather than perception. I think we answered that, but we're trying to address perception by building trust between the community and the police department. I mean, that's as much as we can do on the outside looking in of DPD.
And that's why if any of you ever, hopefully you all are tuning in on that second Tuesday of every month. When I came, I started doing, and Ms. Woods is our complaint intake specialist, so she is the one that hears from all of you when you have a complaint or a question. I started doing summaries just because we are trying to build a trust between the community and police department. So for example, if you heard that there were 20 complaints that weren't investigated, you'll now know why. Because for example, it was just what I just said, maybe it wasn't a DPD, it was against another agency. Somebody really wanted to file a police report versus file a complaint. And then sometimes it's just the same policy. I want to get this changed, but DPD, you have to file your complaint within 60 days. And so sometimes the complaints aren't investigated because they're beyond 60 days. Now they have discretion to do a complaint beyond 60 days, but that could be a reason why. Sometimes if people are writing in about being falsely arrested, etc., at that point it's kind of beyond the police department, and now it's kind of guilt and innocence in court. Like you'll have, if you want to dispute that you were doing, 55 and a 40, then that's really more of a guilt or innocence. You have to take that to court and fight it out versus it being a complaint. So there's various reasons. And so we started summarizing it so you all can see when we say there's no investigation, people can understand why that is, so that these numbers and things have some context and may not be as alarming. So we try to do as much as we can to give you all information so you can, make assessments about the police department.
Yeah, and those reports are excellent. They're just very detailed, and they break down the numbers every month for us and for the citizens. So I definitely encourage everyone to tune in and look at the actual reports so they can get a better idea of what's going on in Dallas and what people are complaining about. Because again, we're averaging 100 complaints a month. It's not this. It's more than just a perception. These people aren't just, hallucinating. They have legitimate complaints. And we have another question. Do you consider every phone call inquiry a complaint, even if deemed too minimal to proceed with further action?
We document them all. So when you see the document that Board Member Tyson was just referencing, we call it complaints and inquiries. So it will be actually broken up into what is an actual complaint, and then it will be broken up into inquiry. So people that called and, for example, just wanted a number to this place or that place, or and we try to help everybody calls our office. So for example, if you called and it was Garland, we will give you the number to Garland's internal affairs. Like, we just don't hang the phone up on people and tell people to go search it for themselves. We try to make sure that we give every member of the community that calls in, if we can, help to where you need to go. But it is broken out so that you can see as a community what actually came in and was a complaint against the Dallas Police Department employee, and then what were inquiries where people from the community were calling in about things related to policing, but they were not an actual complaint. So it's literally broken out. It'll say complaints and then it'll say inquiries, so you can see the difference between the.
And based on those monthly reports, that seems to be a not a big part of y'all job, I would say, but a pretty consistently active part of y'all job. It seems to be directing people to the right places or the correct agencies as well. So appreciate your following through with those people, even though it's not your problem per se.
Ms. Woods, did you find that number for us? Looks like she may be spooling.
Wi-Fi may be bouncing. Here's another question. Are there any other rules or rights citizens should be aware of when they get pulled over or detained? You mentioned the right to ask for a name and badge. Well, never forget.
Can everyone hear me? I'm here.
Okay,
yes, we can hear you now.
Yes.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I switched internet. As of May, we have 1,074 complaints that we received.
And that's just our numbers. But remember, we see every complaint, so that doesn't include the numbers that the complaints we see from DPD. So that's just to our office.
Okay. Yeah. Those are clear metrics. There's clearly, people making complaints. So yeah, keep in mind, everyone, Fifth Amendment, always remember that you do not have to incriminate yourself or answer any questions. Do all police have body cams? DPD officers wear body cams?
No, unfortunately, they don't. That's one of the concerns. I know that Chief Garcia is trying to rectify that, but they don't. I have several recommendations for them about that in terms of until everyone has one. I will be setting some recommendations. For example, if it's a two-person car, then one of them should at least have a body cam and things of that nature. So, but that is an issue that they're working through in the department. And so unfortunately, not everyone has a body-worn camera. And it also just depends on what your role is. So a lot of times detectives won't have body worn cameras, especially like undercover officers may not have body worn cameras. So, and then supervisors a lot of times do not have body worn cameras. But in terms of patrol officers, we really feel it's important for them to have it. I know for many departments it's a budgetary issue in terms of equipping them all. And so I know that council, I believe, has addressed that with Chief Garcia. And I know that he is trying to come up with a plan where he can eventually have all of the patrol officers outfitted with body worn cameras.
Excellent, excellent. How do the demographics of the board reflect those of the city, age, sex, race, etc.? Good question, Mr. West. I couldn't give you an exact breakdown, honestly. Is that something we can get? I don't know if you guys would have ages and things of that nature of the different board members.
We could. I mean, I'd have to just, I'd have to just check with our city secretary's office and just see what we're allowed to release.
Okay.
I don't know what of you guys' information we're allowed to release, but we are going to we're going to be revamping our web page, and Ms. Woods is working with me and our communications department to do that. So at least their pictures will be up there like city council. And so you guys can guesstimate hopefully people's ages and stuff, but we have no problem divulging whatever information. And if Ms. Woods, can you share can I have sharing screen prep? I can at least put a picture up. Then you all can at least see the board members.
Great idea. Great idea.
So if I can share my screen, I will put it up there so you all can at least see them visibly.
All right, and we have another question. There were 2 complaints heard at the last meeting that I attended virtually. Both of them, which could have been avoided, had the complaint comply with the police officer directives. Are those complaints targeted police harassment? I don't quite understand the question. Are those complaints targeted police harassment? No, I mean, there are complaints by the citizens who felt like they were wrongly treated, and looking at DPD policies, they quite possibly were. So they have the right to come back and ask for a further investigation, which they did. The board looked at the evidence and felt that further investigation was needed, and we voted in the affirmative. So that's that. Let's see what else we have. Please talk about the Right Care program, how it's expanding, and how/when citizens can utilize. The I forgot their timeline. The director of the Right Care program came to one of the last board meetings and gave a presentation. There's a timeline for expansion, but I honestly cannot directly quote how they plan to beef the Right Care program up. But the goal of the Right Care program is to get mental health professionals involved on the scene early on to try to defuse situations where there may be some mental health issues, where traditionally you would just have a police officer in charge trying to secure the person or secure the scene or whatever, who may not have the additional training to deal with that type of mental health situation. So it's been very effective, and it is in the process of trying to be expanded and get more funding and get more people involved. But I don't recall their exact timeline, honestly. I have to check my notes.
I can try and pull it up while we're talking.
Okay.
And see if I can pull it up and just read it from there, because this is their work. But let me see if I can put my hand on that. And Ms. Woods, were you able to share screen rights with me?
Let me see. Okay, I'm making you the presenter.
Thank you.
I think you're on.
I can at least just put up that board picture and you all can see the board. Let me see if I can this over.
That'll work.
See.
And I'm scrolling back up, Miss.
Okay,
Oh,
can
there-
you all see that?
Yeah, that's the board.
Oh. That way people can actually just see the board. It doesn't give their ages, of course, or anything, but that, so people can at least see some of the demographics from what you visually can see. It doesn't tell you all the age of the board members, et cetera, but.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for sharing that. I
I
think
will
it's
look and see if I can find the right care while you are talking.
okay. I believe this is from Miss Fountain. It says, would you answer my question regarding violence interrupters? And I'm not sure what that's referring to. So if you want to resubmit your full question, then hopefully it'll pick up in a chat and we can answer it. Or maybe then someone, you also asked, when did your numbers begin? I believe the number we got, that 1,074, is from May of this year up until current numbers.
Numbers, our numbers is something that we present to the board every month.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also something that is on the agenda that is posted on the site every month. What I get in June to y'all in July. So come August, we will have June and July numbers, which will increase from the 1,074.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Okay.
And I think they said when did it start? So those numbers are from October 1st of 2019, when the office opened through May.
I told them. Yeah.
Thank you very much for clarifying. And let's see. Here's a question. You have not answered my question about the budget request for the upcoming budget year. And again, I don't see the original question. I see your follow-up question, but not your original question. So if you would, it looks like Ms. Mott, if you would.
Everyone will put their questions in the question and answer feature.
Yeah, maybe
it will help Chairman Tyson.
Sorry
for the inconvenience. You all just put your questions in the question and answer feature.
That's a good question. What is the cost of a camera? I assume you mean the body worn camera. I do not know the cost of a body worn camera. Anyone on this panel happen to know that? If not, we can look into it and get back to you guys. Body worn camera costs.
So I don't have the exact number in front of me. I asked for 2 additional people for my staff. All of the people that I'm asking for on my staff are to realize the goals of the ordinance. So for example, this year I asked for a complaint intake specialist because our office is supposed to take complaints. I asked for a mediation director because our office is supposed to have a mediation program. And so next year I asked for a community engagement coordinator because one of our biggest jobs is supposed to be in the community. And I also asked for a data/auditor person because we are supposed to do certain audits and analyze certain data. So I will look and see, but we have not asked for operating costs. The cost that I've asked is to increase my staff by 2. And so I will look and see what those numbers came out in terms of staffing, but I did not ask for more operating money. We are still operating, still using those funds, but I did ask for an increase of 2 staff.
Got it. Thank you, ma'am. Does DPD release complaints filed by division, for example, Northeast versus Central, etc., like on the DPD website? Your dashboard and city council reports are great. Thank you very much. I think they do a great job with those reports as well. Does anyone know if DPD puts this information on their website as well, broken down by division?
I am not sure in terms of their dashboard.
Yeah, same here. I rely on the oversight board. Citizens should not have to comply to be treated fairly and with respect. Not complying is not an excuse for excessive force. That is when officers' training should kick in to de-escalate the situation. So yes, harassment and excessive force are still harassment and excessive force. Even if the citizen has not complied, I think that must be the confusion. Fair enough. Next question. Have the board members been made aware that violence interrupters have been hired to diffuse violence prior to the police being involved? I have not heard about violence interrupters. No, that's a great concept. I'll look into that.
So we have them, but that was in effect before this board was actually, that was voted on before this board came into effect, definitely before the office. We have not been consulted on that program, and so I don't know as much about it. You know, eventually what I would love is that, you know, nothing happens in the city having to do with policing without this board or the office knowing. Unfortunately, that's not the case right now. There's a lot that goes on with policing that we don't know about, but I know that the violence interrupter program was voted on, I believe, in the spring of 2019. So that was even before we started, which was October 1 of 2019. And we have not been consulted about that. And I know a lot of questions have been raised about it. So I do plan to, you know, learn more about it, et cetera. So, but we have not been consulted in that or been asked to weigh in any way.
Fair enough. How much funding will you be requesting in an upcoming fiscal year budget?
So that's what I just asked. I have to look and see. It's for those 2 staff people. So I'm looking now to see if I was able to put a number on it, quantify those staff people, but it would be for 2 additional staff, the community engagement coordinator, and also for either a data or auditor for the office.
Excellent.
And I'm trying to pull up that question for you all about right care. So my computer's not cooperating, but I'm trying to get it up for you guys.
And we got you multitasking. The here's another question that doesn't include research. Can you provide a general description of what the investigation involves? Who is completing the investigation field work? And is there a particular person that contacts the individuals involved in the complaint?
So right now, how complaints work, it's twofold. The way the ordinance was written is that our office cannot do an investigation until the police department does one first. So every complaint that comes in, whether it's our office or the police department, if there is going to be an investigation, the Dallas Police Department will do it first. I can't speak for how they do it, you know, because it probably looks different in every division. Internal affairs will have people assigned to it that are part of the internal affairs division. So it looks very different. So if our office does an independent investigation, we actually have one investigator and he works with me and I direct him to do the investigation. He does all the field work and for our office. And depending on how big an investigation is, like I said, we're a very small team right now. So I will get in there and also help to do investigation. I'm a trained investigator, have done that at some point in time in my life. So I'm very well versed in investigation. So if he needs support, depending on how many investigations going on, I will go in and help him with the field work. But so in our office, it's our special investigator. And for the police department, they determine, depending on what division it is, what department it is, they will assign it to a particular detective to look into it, or it could be multiple detectives, but that would be made based on whatever the division is or the department is that is actually doing the investigation.
Excellent. So varies complaint to complaint, fair to say?
Yes. Yes.
All right, guys, I'm gonna click back up and see if I can check the original chat to make sure we didn't miss any questions that might have gone there.
Is one more down at the bottom?
Oh,
So let me,
yeah.
let me do the Right Care Program, Board Member Tyson, while you're looking.
got it.
So according to them, as of
Mhm.
March 24th of this year, there
Mhm.
are a total of 5 teams providing citywide coverage for fiscal year 2022. So the fiscal year that will be coming up starting in October 1st, there will be an additional 5 teams added for a total of 10 teams operating throughout the city. So as
Wow.
of March, they have 5. And next year, starting in the new fiscal year, they're going to add 5 more. So that'll be 10 teams operating throughout the city.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you very much for pulling that up for us. And to the extent there is a Know Your Rights initiative, is there a Know Your Responsibility initiatives to include such things as complying with lawful orders, answering questions politely, providing witness statements, etc.? You don't have to provide a witness statement, but I think in a Know Your Rights session, then yeah, you know, advice would be given, of course, to comply with lawful orders. No one is gonna instruct. Director McClure is an attorney as well, but so I don't think any attorney is going to instruct anyone to do anything unlawful or to not comply with lawful orders as a part of educating them on their rights. But you know, I don't. Now, answering questions politely, I mean, that's not a requirement. So I don't know if that would be a component of her Know Your Rights campaign. Maybe she will advise people to, you know, try to be as nice and as congenial as possible. But the fact of the matter is the citizens are not the professionals, the Dallas Police Department employees that we pay and employ and we insure and we settle lawsuits for, they do not interact correctly with our constituents. Um, you know, their job is to be polite, and more often than not, we see the police officers being impolite to the citizens versus the other way around.
Yes.
So that's common thing, unfortunately. But thank you for the question, though, and I'm going to check the chat right quick. Do you have anything to add, Mr. Director?
I mean, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, if I do tell people to do it politely and things, is because we want them to come home at the end of the day, right? We don't want a simple traffic stop to turn into somebody potentially being killed or injured. And so to the extent, but I agree with Board Member Tyson. I mean, I'm not saying that is right. I'm not saying citizens should walk around and curse officers out and do things, but we are not trained. Officers are trained to de-escalate. So even if I'm standing in your face yelling for 5 minutes straight, you are trained to be able to de-escalate that, to be able to withstand that. And like I said, I'm not getting into the rightness or wrongness of it, but they have specialized training that civilians don't. And so I agree to the community member that wrote that in there. I think we should all be kind and cordial to each other. But when it comes down to some of these issues, you know, the average civilian does not have that kind of training. But I understand the sentiment there and I agree. I don't like when people are, like I said, you know, yelling at officers and doing things of this nature. But in terms of understanding are looking at a complaint, I mean, we do take their behavior into account, but the reality of it is officers are trained to be able to de-escalate and to be able to hopefully keep a calm and cool head in a very stressful situation where most of us are not. And so a lot of times when things are happening on the side of a road or things are happening in certain places and you see a civilian kind of losing their calm, I think that's just normal human reaction. Whereas the officer, though, or officers engage with that person are trained to be able to try to get everybody back to a calm mode and to de-escalate. So
Definitely.
but where possible, of course, we want civilians to be cordial to officers as well.
Definitely. All right, guys, are there any more questions? Oh, does a right care team consist of 2 individuals?
Let me pull it up and I can tell you who So it's a multiple, I'm reading directly from their paperwork. So this is not the Office of Community Police Oversight. I'm reading, they provided us some materials. They came and visited with our board in May and did a full presentation. So they have a multidisciplinary team. And so it's comprised of a licensed mental health clinician, a paramedic, and law enforcement. So it's not just two people. So you will definitely have at least one licensed mental health clinician. You'll have a paramedic and law enforcement. And so I think depending on how, so it's definitely more than two people. And it's usually a lot of times more than just the three I named, because it could be two paramedics or two law enforcement officers, et cetera. But that's who the team is. So those are the players. So DPD, somebody from DFR, the paramedics, which is the fire department, and a licensed mental health clinician.
Thank you for all your hard work and dedication to make our community safer for all citizens. No, thank you for your support, and thank you guys for attending and giving us feedback and just helping us to make this a better organization in the city.
I have a couple of things that was maybe by accident just sent to me privately.
Oh, perfect.
Okay.
But it's not for me. Some of them say your name, Ms. McCleary. I don't know if you saw, it said wonderful about mediation. When it goes to internal affairs, is that within DPD or with your department? Did you answer that one already?
We got that one.
Yeah. So yeah, the mediation program will be out of our office. It won't be DPD.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This one says, Miss Tanya, you spoke to complaints involving police shooting and death. Can you provide examples of complaints that are less severe but are still worthy of a complaint?
Okay, and I think we talked about those. Or to be honest with you, I feel like anything you are concerned about is worthy of a complaint. Like if you told me that, an officer just yelled at you, so I don't make that judgment call. Every complaint that comes in our office, we take it very, very seriously, and we look at it very seriously. So I would say that it's not up to me to determine whether you should file a complaint. I feel like if you were concerned enough to take the time to sit down and write us an email or fill out a complaint form, then you should do that. So I definitely don't want people to feel like there's some kind of hierarchy. If you as a concerned citizen feel that somehow whatever the interaction was did not seem right to you, et cetera. And sometimes it's just that people don't know the policy. So there are some things that look kind of ugly or whatever, but they're not necessarily out of sight of policy. And so that happens as well. So maybe the officer said or did something, but that actually was within the policy, but it didn't feel good or whatever. But we take everything seriously. So I would leave it up to you all to determine. If I feel like if you feel some kind of way about it, so lack of better words, and send in a complaint and just know that we're going to look at it. So
yeah, agreed. That all you have, Ms. Woods?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's check the chat again just to make sure we haven't missed anything. I want to make sure everybody's question is answered.
one of the other things while he's doing that I will say that I'm very proud about is that the police department did not have a video release policy until our office started. That was one of the things I wanted to do when I hit the ground running. I was like, a city as big as Dallas, we have to be able to release video footage. And so I worked with the police department to draft that policy, and our office actually hosts the video showing to the civilians whose loved one is involved. And so that work is very important to me, to be able to be in the room with the family members of the loved one that was killed by the police department. This is not about a right or wrong. This is not getting into whether the police shooting was justified or not justified. That is not the point of this meeting. The point of this meeting is to allow that family to see it before it's released to the public. And so I think that's a very important function that we play. And like I said, it's very clear. We're not in those meetings discussing whether DPD had the right to kill their loved one or not. That's not the point of it. The point of it is to bring the department together with that family to just be able to see what happened. There's a value in that, to answer some initial questions as the investigation is literally unfolded, because it has to be done in the first 72 hours of the incident.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I think, was it our June meeting or the May meeting where the family came in There was a recent shooting, and I think it was very impactful for them to have had that experience, to be able to see the video and kind of talk to you and talk to I think the chief talked to them, chief of police, and just get some feedback more immediately versus in prior times, it would have been weeks, months, even years before footage would have been released, and they would have known exactly what happened to their family member. And then, I think you could tell from that family it was very impactful for them. And I can imagine.
Or they would have, depending on which city you live in, you just cut on the 6 o'clock news and there it is, right? So you saw
That too.
the news.
Yeah, which is just
your
as
loved one
bad.
was killed.
Yeah.
Exactly. So which is just as bad as just cutting it
Right.
on. So the purpose is to try to get to the family. The department does everything it can to notify the next of kin for them to be able to see this before it's released to the public. And so I think that's a very important partnership between our office and the police department.
Yes, thank you for getting that done and keeping that going. We're very lucky to have you in this board, Ms. McClary. Not all surrounding cities do. Oversight is the only way to build better trust for better safety. I agree. We're very blessed here to have this group. Guys, I don't see any other questions, so if you have something, let us know. Otherwise, I guess we will dial out. And Director, do we have a general email address, correct, that they can reach you at if there's any follow-up questions or concerns?
Taylor, can you drop that in the chat? It's the OCPO address. So it's just OC, but Miss Woods will drop that in the chat, but it's just OCPO@DallasCityHall.com. So that's the email to our office. Ms. Woods checks that, I check that. And so if you send us an email there, we will get it. We check it several times a day. So it's just OCPO@DallasCityHall.com.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for attending. I know it's evening, well, not everyone, but the workday is done, and especially the office. I really appreciate you guys and the time y'all put in after hours to make these events happen and to make our meetings happen and to keep everything running smoothly. And again, thank you for Councilman McGrew for showing up. I mean, even though they're on vacation, but still taking time to help out with this and interact. So with that being said, guys, have a good evening, and we look forward to seeing you in August when we have our next meeting, second Tuesday in August. And it'll be on the city website, worst case scenario, but there'll also be other ways you can tune in, whether it be Spectrum.
And one of the things we forgot to say, Board Member Tyson, is that you can speak. Just as City Council allows people to do public comments, you can also do public comments. So we normally will let you sign up all the way up until 12 noon, the day of the meeting. So even if you wake up that morning and say, I'm going to tune in and I want to say something, if you go to our website or the board's website, either one of them, you just put in Community Police Oversight Board or Office of Community Police Oversight, just Google it. The websites will come up and it'll give you instructions, but you can actually sign up to give public comment. It's a 3-minute segment. Where you can just share whatever you would like to share with the board. So we encourage people to do that. The board is always interested in knowing what you all think, whatever comments you have. So please sign in for public comment.
Definitely. The more feedback, the better. We appreciate you guys. Y'all have a good night. Thank you again, panelists.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.